Right, okay, so I'm going to go through this video today, but I've not seen it before. Now, you probably won't believe me because I've had to use a screen capture program. But what I've done, I've put these earmuffs on, gone in my bathroom and ran the shower. So I've not actually listened to what he's actually said because I want to play the game of Guess the Fallacies, because it's about the Welsh Assembly decreasing the age of which you can vote at. Now, I believe that the fallacies are going to be, is going to appeal to emotions. It's going to state because 16-year-olds can do one thing, then they should be able to do another thing, which is voting, without actually questioning whether they should be able to join the army or anything else, which is going to equivocate that too. And I believe it's going to also play a part to whole fallacy. This usually happens where they just point out one 16-year-old, one 17-year-old, which is actually quite well educated in politics, and say, because this one 16-year-old, 17-year-old is quite educated in politics, then the whole lot of them are. So they're the three fallacies which I believe is going to play. So let's just go into this.
It will be a great mistake to lower the voting age to 16. Most 16 and 17-year-olds do not have the level of political knowledge or maturity required.
Seriously? What about this 16-year-old?
So I called it, didn't I? A part to whole fallacy is being played here, where it's going to isolate a particular 16 or 17-year-old who does have the political knowledge to make an educated decision in voting, and then he's going to take this small test sample, this very isolated test sample, and equate it to the whole. Because the MP actually said that most, he never said all, he just said most 16 to 17-year-olds don't have the political knowledge to make a educated vote. But this guy, he's just going to make his own argument and attack that one. Well done in doing that.
They don't accept the socialist argument that the government knows what is good for the people better than the people do.
And this 17-year-old?
Hi, I'm 17 years old and also a member of the Conservative Party, which is quite weird. But I was wondering, what is the Conservative leadership going to do to prove to people of my generation that you are a viable alternative to Labour and Corbyn?
Okay, so it's absolutely pointless pointing this out because he did say most, he didn't say all. So there was a recognition that there was some individual 16 to 17-year-olds who do have the political knowledge in order to make an educated vote. So completely not defeated what he said whatsoever. And let's just go on through this video.
So what were the arguments made by Tory MPs opposing Labour's bill to extend the right to vote to 16 and 17-year-olds? After all, a 16-year-old can leave school, get a full-time job and pay tax.
So, and your point being, do they have the maturity or the knowledge to know the consequences of their decision?
I cannot see how you can give the vote to a 16-year-old and deny them the ability to buy a knife.
Well, that's a really good point, isn't it? What 16 or 17-year-olds going to want to vote if they can't buy a knife on the way to the voting booth?
Now, have you seen what he's done here? A really dirty tactic. We really know that we're dealing with a charlatan now because he's changed the MP's position on a position of maturity to a position of whether 16-year-olds actually want to vote.
I cannot see how you can give the vote to a 16-year-old and deny them the ability to buy a knife.
Well, that's a really good point, isn't it? What 16 or 17-year-olds going to want to vote if they can't buy a knife on the way to the voting booth?
And it is actually a really good point because society has deemed it that 16-year-olds are not mature enough yet to possess a knife. So are they then mature enough to make a vote? Because it does actually take a level of maturity, and I would deem it that it would take an even bigger level of maturity because it affects a lot more people and they will need to have a lot greater knowledge in order to make an educated decision.
The ability to drink alcohol, buy cigarettes, buy fireworks.
Another good point. What 16 or 70-year-old is going to make it to a voting booth without first downing a couple of pints, smoking a packet of cigarettes and letting off a few fireworks on the way? Is that it? Is there anything else a 16 or 17-year-old is going to want to do on the way to the voting booth?
He's doing it again, isn't he? But I think this time he's made it actually even clearer that he's switching his position from a level of maturity to a position of whether they actually want to do it.
Get a tattoo.
OK, enough. Let's get this straight. On Friday, the Conservative Party blocked this bill by filibustering. It used an anti-democratic tactic in which MPs deliberately talk for excessively long periods of time during a parliamentary debate until the bill presented exceeds its allotted time. Quite apart from the fact this sort of behaviour should have no place in modern politics, let's be clear, the Tories did this for one reason and one reason only. They know that if 16 and 17-year-olds are given the right to vote, they would likely see their vote share shrink.
So we have here what I call a hidden agenda fallacy, where they attach a hidden agenda and then they start attacking that hidden agenda rather than what is being said. Now, maybe that hidden agenda does actually exist, and yeah, I could see it existing, but that doesn't stop the fact that 16 to 17-year-olds are not mature enough yet to vote.
Since introduction of voting at 16 in Scotland, youth interest in democracy and politics has increased. In Austria, research on voting behaviour of young people aged 16 to 18s revealed not only are they interested in politics, their turnout to vote is comparable with the total national electorate. That's why the Tories filibustered this bill. That's why they engaged in this outrageous anti-democratic behaviour. And that's why they patronised and belittled the young people of this country.
Right, okay, so we have this hidden agenda fallacy being reinserted in the end. It's like it's a square peg, isn't it? And he's trying to ram it into a round hole. And then right at the end, he just finishes with a emotional fallacy, which I called at the start, where he says that the Conservatives belittle young people. So anyway, I think that's the end of the video now. So sayonara. Right, okay, so I know I said sayonara, but there's just this thing that I've seen right at the end, and I just want to make a closing statement as well. So it says you won't see this in the mainstream media. Now this is a tactic which the left constantly try to use, where they constantly make counterclaims, and it's to make the people in the middle who have the power to change things be like piggy in the middle, and they're getting pulled either side. And we get this with the BBC, where they claim that the BBC are right wing. They're quite clearly not. Just watch an episode of Doctor Who, or if the news doesn't paint that picture enough for you, which it clearly does, but they make this counterclaim so that the people in the middle, the people who actually have the power, who are in a position of power to bring in a bit of impartiality, are pulled either side, and nothing just gets done, and they just get to keep their left-wing propaganda publishers. And I know as well, when I've been making this video, I've been doing that really immature thing. I really hate just pointing out logical fallacies, but it's a bit 5 years ago, atheist movement. But at the same time, I think it's the best way just to highlight the fact that people like this are, well, they're a sophist really. I say sophist too many times, but that's because there's just so many sophists around in the world. And he's what I call a sophisticated sophist. So he builds this persona around him like he's some sort of philosopher, like he's some sort of Platonist, he's a truth seeker, when in reality he's just a charlatan, and he's just using fallacious tactics to try and paint his relative version of reality to you. So he's not trying to show you the truth. He's just trying to cajole you, to hoodwink you, to hustle you to his version of reality. And that's really all I want to say. So this time, for real, sayonara.